Okay, great. My sister had to let me know that I'm on. I didn't know. I'm like looking for myself. It's probably because I don't have there we go, the right gallery view. Okay, this is my first time moderating. I do need to make a quick change to the to who I am. I am not with Full Plant Autism. I am actually a mom. But without further ado, I'd love to talk about this panel and invite these panelists on. I'm going to make introductions one at a time. So let's start with Erica Daniels. Erica is the author of Cooking with Leo, an allergen-free autism family cookbook, founder of Hope Grows for Autism, a nonprofit aimed at improving the lives of families affected by autism through research, education, and advocacy. Eric Daniels is the mother of a child with autism who is determined to give her son and family the highest quality of life possible. And that being said, Erica, I am so excited to hear from you today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And hi to Janie and Sebastien, who I met probably like 5 years ago when I first started out this journey. So I'm really excited for us all to be back together again. It means a lot to me.
Great. We'll take it. We want to learn more about your organization and what you're doing.
Okay, so I'm going to do, this will stop sharing other screen. I was going to share my screen for a minute, if that's cool. Sorry. Okay. I can do that. Okay, share screen. Here we go. Thank you. It was a very nice introduction. And I am just going to go through a few slides to tell you a little bit about what I'm working on now. But as you said, first and foremost, I am the mother of a 15-year-old who has autism, who in fact was just having a hard time or giving his grandfather a hard time, as I heard in the hallway. So that's, always fun too. I typically talk about cannabinoid medicine and autism, and I started saying cannabinoid medicine specifically more recently as a way to really emphasize that this is a medicine, and a lot of times we're using it for pediatric patients. So I'm feeling that of a comfortable term right now. And we all know that autism is an epidemic, and 1 in 40 children are really having a hard time from it in the US. Hope Grows for Autism started almost 5 years ago, around the time that I met Janie and Sebastien. We were a new state having legal cannabis available. So a group of moms and a couple dads banded together and started out, like most of us, in an underground railroad of helping one another. And now we're a nonprofit, and we're beginning to start chapters across the US and Australia. And some of the things and resources that we offer patients, we have a patient assistance program, something I'm very passionate about. Financial hardship or not being able to afford medicine seems to be the number one challenge, aside from legalities, of cannabis. So we have that. We have Facebook support groups for parents who are even state specific, who want to learn about what's available in dispensaries, what doctors are you trying, things like that. We facilitate surveys, research studies, and just try to help facilitate as much data as possible. And then when we typically talk about autism, a lot of times the broader population thinks about the more outward symptoms of autism, like the OCD, anxiety, but the ones on the left are also comorbid symptoms associated with autism. And we know from research several years back that cannabis helps with these underlying symptoms. So we already had a pretty good head start. The treatment options are bleak. We know a lot of this, and Dr. Goldstein went through some of this previously, but cannabis, and my personal experience and what I see with a lot of families, really is becomes a very efficient treatment and cost-effective treatment overall when you're looking at something so overwhelming like antipsychotics and stimulants and things like that. Again, just THC, I love what Dr. Goldstein said about THC, and that is so important. And really the synergy of having at least some THC in a higher CBD product is really going to give us the maximum benefit. And I tend to notice that the THC helps a lot of times with the immediate outward symptoms of autism, like self-injurious behaviors, self-stimulatory behaviors, things like that. And the CBD a lot of times will have a long lasting and overall health benefit to a lot of patients with autism. And tell me when I need to wrap up. So, but some things we like to consider when using cannabis at Hope Grows is, again, like I said, using both THC and CBD. Consider layering products, as Dr. Goldstein said. You're going to have to go through. I typically have 2 or 3 formulations or products that I rotate through in my home, and making sure that you're looking at maybe choosing 3 things that you'd like to work on. If you look at using cannabis for autism as an overall, it's going to be extremely overwhelming. So I like to try to pick 3 things that we want to judge our progress on, and I find those sort of helpful tips. I want to talk a little bit about the Hope range of products. I am autism advisor. I serve as an autism advisor for the Hope range of products, and very exciting and very proud this year. Hope Grows for Autism collected data, and Zalira posted and Zalira released this white paper in June 2020. So 50 patients participated. It was self-reported survey data. I have to move my screen out of here, sorry. They were diagnosed with autism. They received cannabis legally in the state of Pennsylvania. And did they use 1 or more of the Hope products? And the outcome was significant improvements, irritability, meltdowns, aggression, focus, and quality of life, which is awesome. Here's some of the details. And the thing I like to really look at here is if you look at the worsened column, we have 0% worsened. And I would imagine that's true for cannabis medicine in general. Really very little side effects or negativity is reported at all. And really the quality of life is the highlight for me. So not just for the patient, for the entire family. So that's me, and that's what I'm working on in a nutshell. Here is the information. If you would like to reach out to Hope Grows for Autism or find out more information about the Hope products. And thanks for having me.
Great. And I just want to remind those of our viewers that we do have the Q&A box open. So as you have questions for any of the panelists, we're going to have some time at the end of all of this to be able to circle back around and get some questions and answers done. So thank you so much for sharing, Eric. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to move on to the next panelist, which is Sebastien Cotte. So Sebastien became actively involved in the field of medical cannabis in 2013 while seeking alternative treatment for his son's Jagger's rare terminal mitochondrial disease. In 2014, he and his wife became medical cannabis refugees to Colorado to access oil for Jagger. The family's back in Georgia now, and Sebastien has a bachelor's degree in international business and over 20 years of business experience. He's completed the medical marijuana certification program offered by Americans for Safe Access. Sebastien, you're co-founder of Georgia's Hope. You sit on a board as a board member of Flower Hope, which is a 501c3, and your credentials just go on from there. I was pretty impressed when I was reading about you. But I would love to hear from your perspective what's going on right now, and tell us what's up and what's relevant and important.
Yes, so thank you very much and for the introduction. So my name is Sebastien, and as you saw in the picture, I have a little boy named Jagger. And Jagger has a rare mitochondrial disease called Lee's disease, and it's a terminal disease, very progressive disease. They told us when we first got diagnosed with this disease that life expectancy was going to be around 4 years old. So they said Jagger will see his 3rd birthday, but he won't see his 4th birthday. Obviously, that's not the news you want to hear as a parent. So we did everything we could. We looked around, we got into a drug trial. We really tried everything for Jagger. And then we stumbled into cannabis, really just one day watching TV, watching weed on CNN and saw the documentary. And we're like, okay, maybe there is something to cannabis. Let's take a look. Let's look into that. So to make the very long story short, we moved to Colorado. I went to Colorado, I checked it out. I liked it. I thought it could help. So we decided to move to Colorado because we were not able to pass a bill in Georgia in 2014. And we have only part-time legislative session in Georgia. It's only 40 days a year. So we start in January, finish around April. And if you don't pass a bill by then, you have to wait till the next January. So we didn't have that much time with Jagger, and we decided to move to Colorado. And we became medical refugee, which was not only a great experience, but it was life-changing. It's something very difficult because you have to leave everything behind, your family, your support system, your friends, your doctor, your teams. Jagger was on a hospice. We have to leave all the hospice team, find a new one in Colorado. And then we had to get to Colorado, which was extremely difficult because Jagger is not on a commercial airplane because, long story short, but we almost had an emergency landing years before. So we drove to Colorado, took 6 days. It was very, very difficult. Every 3 to 4 hours, we had to stop and spend the night in a hotel because Jagger was doing so bad. He was screaming so much. But we got to Colorado in August of 2014. Within a few weeks, we were able to get all the doctor things when we needed, all the cards. And we started Jagger on CBD at the time, Haley's Hope CBD. And we saw a lot of improvement from Jagger right away. But he mostly just, he was feeling better. He was happier. He was looking at us. He was tracking. His eyes were tracking better. And after a couple of weeks, we actually saw even more improvement, and Jagger started smiling again. And I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but he hasn't smiled for a year and a half before that. So obviously for us, it was a really, really big deal. And right there, we knew that we made the right decision moving to Colorado. As difficult as it was, as the struggle of the trip there, we still know we made the right decision. Now, we were only going to be in Colorado for 3 to 4 months, but Jagger was doing so well. Then we added THC to his regimen, and we started really helping with his pain. He has a lot of pain in his muscle due to the mitochondrial disease, and that was working so well. We were able to not only decrease his seizures from 10 to 12 a day to like 3 to 4 a day. Even today, it's still around 2 to 4 a day, depending on the day. And also, we're able to take him off a lot of his pain medication. So since we started cannabis, Jagger has not been on Oxycontin for 4.5 years and only had a handful doses of morphine in the last 2 years when he used to have those medication, not daily, but weekly. So it was a huge difference from the cannabis. We were in Colorado for 13 months. But one thing that was bad about Colorado is that Jagger has a lot of breathing issue. And with the altitude, he never got used to it. They keep telling us, oh, just wait, he's going to get used to it. But he never got used to it. So after 13 months, we moved back to Georgia. In the meantime, we passed a bill, the Haley's Hope Act, that allows us to have possession of cannabis in Georgia. Which is one of those weird laws where you can have it, but you can't buy it. There's nowhere to buy it. There's no dispensaries. There's nothing. So the state of Georgia is pretty much telling us, you go ahead, break federal laws, break as many state laws from other states as you want. We don't care. We are Georgia. And you come back in Georgia, if you have oil and it's less than 5% of THC and you have a card, nothing can happen to you. So it's one of those weird situation where, you know, the law doesn't really make a lot of sense, but that's all we could pass for many years, and we tried. Georgia's Hope is a group that I co-founded at the end of 2013. We've been pushing for legislation for 6 years now, and finally in 2019, in April of 2019, so a little bit over a year and a half ago, we passed the Georgia's Hope Act. That was cool. We named it after us. We helped write that bill, and it allowed cultivation and distribution of medical cannabis in the state of Georgia. Sadly, things are very slow, and like I say, a year and a half later, we still don't have dispensaries. We still don't have anything as far as a way to buy it, but we are moving forward, and it's going to be 6 licenses in the state of Georgia, 2 large ones, 4 small ones. And what we're hearing is that in the next, hopefully, few weeks, the application for the licenses are going to be out. We were hoping it might happen this morning, but it did not happen this morning, so we have to wait a little bit longer. But it's coming, and once the licenses are issued, the company that gets the licenses have 1 year, 12 months to put product on the shelf. So we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel in Georgia. It's been a lot of work from a lot of people, a lot of parents, a lot of very dedicated patients and parents for the last 6 years that work really hard, but finally things are moving a little bit forward in the state of Georgia. So it's exciting, and you know, we still have to wait a little bit longer. We still have to break some laws to get the cannabis we need for our kids, but it's coming, and it's going to be super interesting, super exciting. And we're very happy that finally, in the next, hopefully 12 to 13 months, medical cannabis patient in the state of Georgia, which we have over 20,000 people registered right now, today in the state. Without even a way to get the product, we already have 20,000 people on the registry. So we can only imagine it's going to be hundreds of thousands of people once there is an actual way to get the product here. So that's what we've been working on, and that's super exciting. And that's the main thing. There's also a lawsuit, but maybe we'll talk about this later, federal lawsuit. But for now, that's kind of just wanted to share what was going on in Georgia.
Well, that's great. You actually have more time if you want to talk about that federal law.
Yeah.
People would like to hear about that, so feel free.
Okay, sure. So in 2017, Jagger, my son, and so myself representing him, a little girl called Alexis Bortel out of Texas that moved to Colorado, that was also a medical refugee, Jose Belen, whom is a veteran from Afghanistan, and Marvin Washington, the NFL player, Super Bowl champion with the New York Jets and Denver Broncos, and the Cannabis Culture Club, which is a minority cannabis club out of New York City. We filed a lawsuit against the federal government to deschedule cannabis, saying that cannabis was unfairly and unconstitutionally placed in Schedule 1. As you can imagine, such lawsuits take a long time. So to make the long story short, 2017 we were in federal court. We filed it in 2018. We had a hearing in federal court in Manhattan, in the Southern District of Manhattan. The judge came back and said that it was very clear, looking at Alexis and Jagger, that cannabis has medical properties, but unfortunately, there is a process, which is petitioning the DEA to deschedule cannabis, and the judge cannot bypass the process just because he likes us and because he agrees with us. So it was a loss, but it was good to see a federal judge actually on the record saying, yeah, cannabis absolutely has medical property. We cannot deny that. So we appealed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeal, also in New York. And we had a court hearing, and it was great. And it kind of the same thing happened. And they say, you know, we believe you, we agree with you, but there is a process. So we counter-argue, and yes, there is a process. You can absolutely petition the DEA, but it takes 9 years. The average petition takes 9 years. And Jagger and Alexis do not have 9 years to wait. I mean, Jagger is still on hospice today, and while he's doing better, he still has a terminal disease, and he's still very, very sick. So he doesn't have 9 years to wait for the DEA to decide when cannabis, as we all know, is not, you know, it's medicine and it's not dangerous, it's not addictive. And so the Second Circuit Court of Appeal decided that we still have to follow the process, but they told the DEA that they must go faster. There's no way they can take 9 years. They have to go much faster to answer our request. However, they also tell us that the best case scenario is that they will move cannabis to Schedule 2. So as a plaintiff and with our legal team, we put our heads together and we all agree that Schedule 2 was not what we wanted. Schedule 2 could Nobody know exactly what would happen if cannabis was put on Schedule 2, but more than likely it will not be anything very beneficial to patients. It will more than likely put it in the hands of big pharma, make it more difficult actually for some people to get it, especially in legal states. And Legal 2 could technically, legally void every state medical cannabis law. So we did not want to take that chance. So we told the Second Circuit Court of Appeal, no, if that is the best you can do, then please deny us. And what we'll do, we'll just go to the Supreme Court. And that's exactly what happened. And on July 7, we actually filed our case to the Supreme Court. Now, obviously, as everybody is aware, the Supreme Court right now is a big mess. And unfortunately for us, Justice Ginsburg was also the justice that was supposed to represent us because she's in charge of all the cases coming from the Second Circuit. So the way you work in the Supreme Court is when you file a case to the Supreme Court, they only really take about 5% of the cases. So a lot of people file cases to the Supreme Court, but they don't take them. You need to have 4 judges that agree to hear the case. Doesn't mean you're going to win it. They just mean that they give you a hearing. And Justice Ginsburg was very good at being influential to our other justice and tell them what case she really strongly believed in. And we knew that our cases had a great chance with her because she was going to be a yes and likely get 3 other justices to agree to hear our case. Obviously, she's now gone, sadly. And we don't know who's going to replace her, or we don't know when she's going to be replaced, because obviously there has to be hearing in the Senate. But that being said, we still have a conference on October 9, and on October 9, it's when they will decide on our case. So we hope that another one of the justices can see some benefits on our case and can see that it's a case worth hearing. And we do have good arguments, and hopefully they will give us a hearing for the 2021 session. But on October 9, we will find out if the Supreme Court take our case on or not. So that's what's going on with the federal lawsuit. Now, if they were to take the case and hear our case and we were to win this, then we could technically deschedule cannabis. And that would be not only amazing for all the patients, but I think it would be great for everybody in the country. We've been fighting for this for so many years, much before I've been involved. So I'm hoping that this case can be the case that changes everything. But even if it doesn't, at least I'm hoping that this is a case that opens the door for other cases to come after us. And as home point, sooner or later, somebody's going to win, because we are on the right side of history. We are on the right side of justice, and this needs to happen. And hopefully it will happen sooner than later. So
that's pretty fascinating. We didn't get any Q&A during that session, but I do have a question for you about descheduling cannabis. Would that not open up the United States to really regulate it, do you think? Or would states still have choice to move forward if they wanted to? Do you know much about that?
Well, right now it's kind of a guessing game. What I believe would happen is if we were to win the lawsuit and cannabis were to be descheduled, I think Congress would act really quickly to come up with some federal regulation, or at least some federal law, so it doesn't become a wild west overnight. And so, it would more than likely be a decision that will be maybe effective, 2 months down the road or 3 months down the road, leaving time for Congress to come up with a plan. That's my guess, but I think that's what would happen if we were to win.
Oh, I just thank you so much for all the work that you've done on that, Sebastien, along with the other cannabis people who are not on this call, the champions that are nationwide, that have worked on issues, not just federally, but also at their state level. So thank you for that. And we are going to still have questions and answers at the end of this, so please feel free to pop those in as they come to mind. But talking about legislation is going to bring me to our next panelist, which is panelists Rylie Maedler. Maedler, is it Maedler or Maedler? Am I saying it right?
Maedler.
Maedler, thank you so much. So Rylie Maedler is in charge of the research and development company Rylie Sunshine, along with her mother, Janie Maedler, dedicated to creating safe and affordable cannabis oil for children living with debilitating illnesses. They started a foundation in 2015 called Rylie's Smile Foundation, which provides education, technology devices, and advocates for more treatment options for sick children. And according to your bios, Rylie and Janie, you are cultivating and producing some full spectrum products as well as changing laws. So welcome. We look forward to hearing all about how these efforts are going. And so, yeah, without further ado, I just invite you both to chime in as you normally do. I've not had you on panel before, but I imagine that you're used to this. So feel free.
Okay. So, Mom, were you going to say something? You can.
No, I said you speak first and then I'll chime in later.
Okay, so I'll start from the beginning. In second grade, I was diagnosed with giant cell granuloma bone tumors. And basically what they did is they ate away the majority of the bones in my face. My doctors told me that I would be deformed for the rest of my life. I wouldn't have teeth and I would need plastic surgeries when I'm older. And shortly after my diagnosis, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. And so the treatment options we were given were like chemotherapy. They all had a lot of bad side effects. So my mom was able to negotiate a watch and wait period. And during that time, she was just looking up alternatives to like help me with my pain and just small things like that. And cannabis kept popping up. So she decided to try it. And right away, we saw good results in my pain and swelling. And only a few months later, we saw bone regeneration and tumor shrinkage. And so after I was able to leave the hospital, I started the Rylie Smile Foundation to help educate families about cannabis, advocate for better and safer access, and support research of less toxic therapies. Because I felt bad for the families who were still in the hospital and didn't know about cannabis and couldn't try it because it was illegal. And so after that, I passed Riley's Law in my state, which made medical cannabis legal for children. And then after that, I passed SB 181 so that patients could take cannabis on school grounds. Before, I would have to walk off of school grounds every day to take my medicine, like across a bridge, and in any weather. And I knew that kids in wheelchairs or oxygen tanks wouldn't be able to do that. And then after that, we passed an autism petition to add autism to our state's program. And then after that, we passed compassionate care, which gives doctors the ability to recommend cannabis for any conditions they feel would benefit from cannabis, as long as there's research to back it up. So that works well for the rare conditions. And we also have written a bill for Section 8 housing. Currently, people in our state living on Section 8 housing and government property, they can't get a medical card because it's government property. And so we've written a bill for that, but it was kind of put to a halt because of the coronavirus. So we're hoping we can continue with that soon. And also federally, I'm hoping to be able to change the school education programs on cannabis, because currently they are teaching scare tactics when all that does is teach false information and it negatively impacts the patients. Like as a patient myself, I've seen the health videos and kids in class would like turn around to me when the videos would say that cannabis makes people dumb and it makes people insane and stuff like that. Kids would like turn around and look at me weird. And so that just puts all of these stigmas on the people taking it, and that can create this whole new bullying problem where if a kid is bullied because of these stigmas, then they'll be scared to talk to a school administrator because it's a part of the curriculum. It's like enforcing it in a way. And so that's just wrong on all kinds of levels. And I'm hoping to change our education programs to harm reduction. And I'm hoping to update the information in the videos so students are taught real information and harm reduction, so no one is harmed with the education or anything, and we're learning real information. I also started Rylie Sunshine after families have contacted us through our foundation. We've had families get oil and it made their child worse. And so we would take that oil to labs and it would come back and it would have chemicals and different toxins in it. And so we started Rylie Sunshine so we can make safe medicine that is also at a reasonable price, so families don't have to choose between growing broke and taking their medicine. We try to help out as much as we can, and we also are doing research on the best ways to grow hemp in the Mid-Atlantic region with Front Range Biosciences, so we can learn how to grow the best hemp possible.
So sounds like she covered it. So so all that has taken place in Delaware, except for our hemp grow is in Virginia, and that's where we're doing our research. And I'm in Virginia right now. That's why we're on different pictures. So I came down to Virginia because we had to do some drone thermal pictures of our farm, and we had to check on our cultivation and our drying process and everything, and take some data samples. And I'm coming back home tonight. But yeah, so we're really excited about our partnership with Front Range and being able to donate to families in need. That's been one of Rylie's biggest goals in life since she started all this, is, you know, meeting children who their parents were in a really bad predicament of having to make a choice between, you know, keeping their lights on or paying their rent, and being able to afford cannabis oils. And even though they're in the state program, they're not given any discounts. And so she is just so excited that Front Range has helped us be in the position that we're able to now donate these oils to families in need.
That's amazing. Coming from a state, like I came from California just this month, September, but I spent 5 years in California, and affordable oil is really not there. You know, it was back in the 20 years where it was gray market, and it was, you know, it was bartered and that sort of thing. So I have to commend you both. You're going to be making a full spectrum. Is that right?
Yes,
Yes.
indeed. Yes.
Have you ever grown before, Janie?
This is our second year of growing. Sorry, my husband just walked in. So this is only our second year of growing. Last year we had just a couple of acres, and then we jumped from a couple of acres to over 5 acres of plants. So we had 4,800 acres of plants. Yeah, a lot more. So it's a big learning curve of almost 5,000 plants this year. And now we're building a processing facility to be fully integrated. And it's just, everything kind of went boom really fast. And so it just takes my husband and I back. We were just so fortunate to have the results that we had. We feel that we have to pay it forward. And we've seen so many families struggle. Even our own family struggled because we were paying thousands and thousands of dollars. We were selling all the kids' toys and clothes to be able to pay for her medicine every single month. And we're middle class, but what about the other?
Right.
What about the other families who weren't even as well off as us? You know, we just keep thinking about those families that we've watched their children suffer, and you know, it's just not fair.
Right. And there's a lot of, and I know that the doctors Sulak and Goldstein spoke about this. There's a lot of isolate out there. You know, a lot of isolated CBD, and my daughter has not had the best results from isolated CBD. The best is to be able to get that full spectrum and the entourage effect and all of that. And there's a lot of advances coming out in working with the plant too now for delivery, making it more bioavailable. And I hope you're following all of that so that you can.
Definitely. And even a lot of it is testing your irrigation water, testing your soil before you even put a plant in the ground, and knowing everything. It's not just seed to sale, it's also your soil, your water, your environment, what you're putting into the ground. There is just so much more than just making sure it has all the cannabinoids. We are learning so much from being partnered with a very good company. And even we're doing tissue samples every 2 weeks to follow the growth of the plant. I mean, these plants have become our babies. And Rylie and I can walk out into a field and we know certain plants that we watched. And even when we're out there weeding and you know, checking the plants, it's almost like we've become so familiar with them. Mm-hmm. And you know, I have like a stack of lab reports that are huge because every 2 weeks we're taking tissue samples, and it almost hurts us to cut them, you know.
Yeah, no, having spent 5 years in California, and not just California, but I landed in the Emerald Triangle not realizing that was a thing. like I threw a dart at the map, like where am I going to go as a medical cannabis refugee, and just threw a dart at the map and ended up in Sebastopol of all places, which is got like so many growers. And it really becomes this relationship between you and the plant. And it's really interesting to me to hear you talk about the hemp plant, because I have no experience with that, but a bunch of experience with walking through marijuana fields and in California, just getting really connected to the plant. So this is super exciting. I love what you're doing. That's amazing.
Really, I was very surprised because I've been in cannabis fields and growing our own. I was surprised at how much the same it is, because our field is in the small town of Bird's Nest, and the small town of Bird's Nest now smells like marijuana.
Right. Oh, great.
It does. And you know, and the next door neighbor is a sheriff and he hates it, and he's like not happy that he didn't expect it to smell, you know.
Yeah.
And it does the last 3 weeks of flowering. It smells, and he just didn't expect that.
Terpenes. Try to explain that to him.
It does. It is very smelly, but I've promised him, you know, it doesn't have pollen. You shouldn't be allergic to it. I promise.
He doesn't really get it.
Okay, maybe he will someday.
He
Thank
will. He
you
certainly will.
so much. I really appreciate this. I'm going to bop around a little bit, and I'm going to ask a few questions, if that's okay. On the last, we've got another 15 minutes. So you guys be just kind of cooking a little bit about what you might want to bring up, because we've got some time here. But I want to go back to Erica. Erica, your product, you're going to have to unmute yourself. The Hope product, is that your line?
The Hope range of products is, yes, it's a Zalera Therapeutics product that's available in Pennsylvania and Louisiana, and some other states. And I'm a partner and an advisor.
Got it. Does it meet the 0.03% THC, or have you got grows in those states?
Yeah, so it's a product that's a THC heavy product line and sold strictly through medical dispensaries.
Got it. Okay, beautiful. And then another thing I wanted to ask you about, which is near and dear to my heart, and Janie, you touched on this when you were talking about soil, is talking about your cookbook. I would love to hear about how diet affected and changed your family, and specifically your son's autism.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the natural health path that I started on, which eventually led me to cannabis. But we had, like a lot of children with autism, food allergies, GI issues, things like that. So we had no choice but to change the diet. And I did notice that when we took out certain foods, especially allergens or foods that typically could agitate people, like dairy or gluten, things like that, there was a tremendous increase in overall health, and then in turn your mood and behavior. So yeah, it's something that was really successful for us. And the other part of it is that Leo loved to cook. So that was the way that him and I could relate, because at the time he didn't really have much language, you know, and yeah, so it was good in both ways.
Beautiful. That is, I love that. And I hope that all of you stay on to the absolute end of this entire presentation, because we are going to touch more on that. There's going to be more patient testimonials and more moms that are talking towards the end of it. But yeah, thank you. And where can people get your book? Where can we get your cookbook?
You can get Cooking with Leo on Amazon. You can get to it through hopegrowsforautism.org. A portion of anything that I do make or am related to goes back to help families affected by autism, in particular to support research and programs that we have. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So Sebastien, when I was reading your bio, I realized that you, for some time, led a group that supported families that had to relocate, medical refugees. Is that still in swing? Are you still working on that?
Yeah, so I am on the board of American Medical Refugee, which is an organization that was started by Amy Hildebrand in Colorado. And she came from Oklahoma and she started the organization and asked me to get on the board. And pretty much now there are less and less medical refugees in Colorado, which is a good thing. Mostly because more and more states are passing laws so people can actually go home. So that's good. But back in 2013, 2014, 2015, it was hundreds and hundreds of us in Colorado. And the group was started by Amy just to try to give some normalcy to people and get together for Thanksgiving, having cookout, because, we're all coming from different states. We don't know anybody in Colorado. We literally left everybody that we love behind. And in some cases, I was a lucky one. Both myself and my wife were able to go to Colorado, but the great majority of the refugees in Colorado, usually the mom end up going and the dad end up staying home in their home state. So now we're having those single family, people that not used to it, and they are by themselves. They don't have any friends. They don't know anybody. So the group was just made as to hang out all together, to support each other, to help each other. And it was a great group. And it's still active. It's just not as active as before because there's less people. But, I'm obviously not in Colorado anymore, but Amy still is in Colorado. And she still has, a couple of times a year event. We do Halloween and Thanksgiving. 1 year we get some donation and we're able to give turkeys, to a lot of the families and Thanksgiving meal. Because the other thing too is, one thing that most people don't ever talk about, it's a financial aspect of moving to Colorado. It's extremely, extremely expensive. And, I'm lucky to be middle-class family. Both my wife and I are working. So even for us, it was very expensive. And we spent our entire savings and we had saved for many years to go to Colorado. But a lot of people don't even have savings to go to Colorado. So they end up there and have, struggle a lot. So American Medical Refugees really tried to help with not only free cannabis oil when we could, but also, free meals and things like that. So it's a great organization, and I'm very happy and very honored to be a part of it.
Well, interestingly enough, when we moved, I pulled up, decades of roots from Huntsville, Alabama, and relocated to Sonoma County, one of the most expensive counties in the country. Imagine the financial culture shock that I was up there. But I was the only one, and what I found was that the community there, the cannabis community, just absolutely opened their arms to us, which was lovely. But I'm happy to know that it's still in swing. I'm happy to know that are they working with people in other states that may have moved for cannabis?
Yes, so the main chapter is out of Colorado, but Amy created chapter in different states. There's one in California, which is not as big as Colorado because for some reason, probably because of the weed documentary and CNN, kind of everybody moved to Colorado. But some people moved to Maine, some people moved different places. So, but the main chapter is in Colorado, but she has different state chapters as well. So
cool. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sebastien. I appreciate all of your work and your sacrifices that you've made. And I guess at this point, like, how would you encourage people that are considering trying to make it easier? Like, for instance, I live in Alabama and my daughter's grandparents and all are here. What can the average person do to help affect? Where do we start to affect laws in our states?
Yeah, so I think what I found out to be the most powerful, and I did a lot of lobbying obviously in Georgia, but I also helped with some stuff in Colorado, especially trying to pass PTSD as a qualifying condition, and then at the federal level. And what I found the most effective is you got to make it personal. Those politicians, they're talking to hundreds of people, thousands of people, and they don't really care about you. But if you can make it personal and make it relatable to them, that's a game changer. So if you can, bringing your kids to the Capitol or to meetings with your elected official, that's great. Now, obviously, some kids like Jagger, I don't take him out of the house. It's very difficult, and plus he has a weak immune system. But share your story. Even if you cannot bring your kid, bring pictures, share your story. And then what I always like, and this is kind of like the biggest advice I ever have to everybody, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I've been doing this for a few years. But every time I meet a brand new legislator, I always end up my meeting after I share Jagger's story and I tell them, This is what happened. And I always finish my meetings with, now, imagine if it was your kid, what would you do? And that's a game changer, because right there, it becomes a story about a kid. Okay, this is sad, yeah, Jagger, okay, but I don't know Jagger. But now, right there, we're like, okay, Jagger could be my son, my grandson. What would I do if he was my grandson or my son? And that's a game changer, because now all of a sudden, you know, they put themselves in your shoes, even just for a few seconds, but they realize that, you know, yes, they do need to help. And I'm not going to say it works every single time, but I always end my meeting with that when it's a first time meeting. And I've been seeing some great results with that. Make it personal. Share your story and make it personal is my biggest advice I have when you're trying to change laws.
So just being as open and transparent as possible, because the truth is we don't really have to elaborate our stories to make it heart-wrenching.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. All right. We do have a question from our audience, if you will, and this has to do with food. So this is going to be directed at Erica, I believe, unless somebody else has got some knowledge here. Our 14-year-old son, who's autistic, is a very picky eater and only eats about 15 foods. Any tricks in your cookbook? It is for you, Erica, for switching a child over to a healthier diet. We eat very natural and try to stick to whole food, but our son refuses and has meltdowns when it's offered to him or his foods are taken away.
So that's really hard, especially at 14. That's a rebellious age in a lot of ways. I mean, I see my son now going back and he's like, Mom, I don't, thinking like, I want to eat this. But yes, in the cookbook, there's a, I don't know what the 15 things are. I'm guessing they're chicken nuggets, chicken fingers are in there somewhere. So there's a recipe for meatloaf where you can sneak your vegetables in, and grind them up and put them in. And there's substitutes. I think a lot of times with the kids, it's about what it looks like. Does it look like typically what they're used to? So if I'm going to make or buy gluten-free nuggets, we want it to look the same. So I think those are tips that worked for us. But yeah, that's a toughie.
I have a small suggestion, just because I have a son who has cyclic vomiting and only eats 2 foods. So, or at least he did about a year ago. So our therapist worked with him, and we went through a session where once every 4 days he had a challenge. So the first challenge was smell the food, and in 4 days the second challenge was put your tongue on the food and taste, and then the third challenge was put the food in your mouth but you don't have to swallow, and then the fourth challenge was chew, you don't have to swallow. Fifth challenge was chew and swallow. So before then, we would just force him to try it or put it in his mouth, and he would vomit all over the place. And Rylie can attest to that. He's horrible about this. And most of it is because he has cyclic vomiting. And so, I mean, we just had a success this week where he ate tacos. He's never had tacos in his life. And so we were all celebrating. The whole family was celebrating. But every time he would have a success with a food, we would also treat him to something, which his thing is Legos. And so we'd get him a small Lego set, like $8 to $14. But a year ago, he would only eat canned ravioli. And there was one other food he would eat, and Rylie might be able to remember what it was.
Boxed macaroni or Reese cups.
Yeah, that was it. But he now has graduated up to 9 foods in 1 year. I mean, it takes a very long time, but a lot of it could also be sensory if he's on the spectrum. So that's might help too. I don't know.
Great advice both. Thank you very much for that. Awesome. Okay, great. We got time for maybe 2 more questions. And so I'm going to take this back to Erica, and then I'm probably going to ask the Maedlers as well next. But Erica, if there were one highlight that you could have on all of your different organizations and things that you're doing, if money were no object, like where would you go with your organization? Like what would you promote?
I mean, cannabis as a frontline treatment for autism. the end goal, and everything else that we need, the building blocks that we need to get there, the research, the education, the advocacy are all a part of it. It's just the most unfortunate part of what's happening here.
Yeah. So how do you feel that the general public could take part in your goals?
By learning more. I think Rylie's program I love it. I love it. I love it. I think that it's programs like that are a huge, huge start. You know, I think about it. My daughter's 13 and she's hearing all this stuff in school, and then at home, you know, she's seeing her brother use cannabis. So it's very confusing. But I think, and that starts with the next generation. Hopefully they'll just think differently than us.
Let's hope so. And Rylie, what parting comments do you have about how people can get more involved in what you're doing?
So we have a website. We have two actually, one for Rylie Sunshine, one for Rylie Smile Foundation. If they want to message us or just ask any questions, our foundation is RylieSmileFoundation.org, and our company is RylieSunshine.com. And we also have education courses for our foundation if anyone doesn't know what to give their kids, and if they're new to cannabis or if they just want to learn more about it in general, then those are good classes to take.
Well, you are quite inspirational, my friend, for such a young buck to have all of this going on, your own company and being so involved in law. And I know for a fact that there is a mama behind you that has absolutely pointed you in the right direction, and I love that so much. Thank you.
She might be behind
Sebastien,
me.
keep up the great work. We love you, and we're going to continue to offer our support, our love, our prayers for you and your family, and just you're a huge part of my heart now. I'm so happy to have met all of you, Erica, you as well. What a beautiful panel you've all been. So I want to take the rest of the time that we have to pay tribute to another well-loved cannabis champion, and that is Charlotte Figge. I hope I don't cry, and I haven't even started this, but anyways, yeah, she was so inspirational for me. She's the reason I moved. So y'all are gonna have to take me off here. So we're going to have a little short video to just tribute to her life. And so take it away, Jeff, whenever you're ready. Thank you all.
All you sisters in circle, children of mine, humble my heart, sharpen my mind. Though we're scattered and wearied, change is upon us. We are bound till the end, still a family, I promise. The all that you love will be taken someday by the angel of death or the servants of change. In a flood water tide without rancor or rage, sing loud while you're able, in grief and in praise. For so many years we swam into the tide, and we would not abandon the heroic and kind. Shared our sweat and our shelter, our bodies and blood. Godspeed and good fortune, I will miss you, my love. For all you hold dear will be taken someday by the angel of death or the servants of change. In a flood water tide without rancor or rage, sing loud while you're able, in grief and in praise. Now we meet best friend, you're a third. Sing loud while you're able, in grief and in praise. Sing loud while you're able, in grief and in praise.
Pediatric is a leader in pediatric cannabis medicine, providing high quality, consistent, and effective cannabis products to treat children with epilepsy, autism, childhood cancer, and other pediatric conditions. Cannabis and CBD are proving to be a very strong alternative to Western medicine, and we're finding in many instances to be much more effective in treating the symptoms associated with these conditions. Pediatric has developed our products based on observational data from over 10,000 pediatric patients spanning the last 7 years, and our aim is to continue perfecting our products to be able to treat specific symptoms associated with conditions such as seizures, behavioral issues, pain management, and even trouble sleeping at night. We know firsthand what it feels like to be hopeless and have no viable solutions on the horizon. So we're not only here to improve the quality of life for children, but also their families as well. We have built our foundation on education and empowerment. Our consultations are always free of charge, and our support extends far beyond the product on the shelf. When other people don't get it, we do. Welcome to our family.
The Ease Momentum program is an accelerated program with 10 amazing companies
to help entrepreneurs in minorities like myself that are in the cannabis industry.
We were given $50,000 grants and 10 weeks to really learn about how to build successful businesses when regular business practices aren't even available to us.
That made us, one, better entrepreneurs, and also prevented us from making certain mistakes that we didn't have to in our business that actually saved us a ton of money.
All the founders have amazing diverse backgrounds. We've all come from walks of life that really tell stories about cannabis and the passion and grit that we have to be in the space.
Momentum was our answer to the very difficult question, how does any company, let alone Ease, actually impact the obvious inequity in our industry today?
We're not just a brand that's just a technology platform, but we're also extending our resources and everything that we have in our ecosystem to folks who really need it most.
Capital is key because it's such a capital intensive industry. So putting them in front of investors opens up many, many doors.
There were 130 applicants and 10 spots. We launched a program in September and chose our inaugural class for Momentum in November.
I am the founder and CEO of Greenbox.
We are both the co-founders of James Henry SF.
I was arrested and raided. I had to fight 4 felonies for cannabis.
The first time police raided my house, I was 12 years old.
What do I want to get out of this program, and why did I apply?
Cannabis is a means of bringing economic equality.
We'll be able to utilize the industry-leading resources.
Help me create a space for people of color.
This is for the people. Que viva la gente.
Thank you again, Ease, for giving us this opportunity. Yes, thank you, Ease. Love you guys.
What I loved about the entrepreneurs in this cohort were, they were rock stars. They all came with that same frame of mind that, this was an opportunity.
This is huge for me. 50 grand that we can spend on our business and we don't have to sweat about giving up pieces of our company. It just means so much, and not just the money, but also the experience.
Ease is giving me a platform where I can learn. I can be greater than what I am. I can be put in spaces and be put around people that are innovators and people that want to see me win. So that's big for me.
Having this is going to propel us to the next level. And I'm really grateful because I'm going to get to launch my product.
It gives the companies and these entrepreneurs visibility, and it gives them exposure that they wouldn't have on their own. It could be the difference between a business making it and not making it.
We were handpicked, selected in terms of the future of the cannabis space. That said a great deal to people. It brought us a lot of attention, a lot of light, more meetings, and more publicity as well. So all around, it's just been nothing but a positive turnout.
It was very well named. It was a momentum for us. We received the grant when we were doing the first run of our product. It was just the beginning of something wonderful.
Even going back to my neighborhood, my community, people are like, oh, you're working with Ease, that's kind of a big deal. And I'm like, yeah. That exposure is pretty dope. It was something that we can kind of leverage as a company.
One of the biggest issues that entrepreneurs, especially equity entrepreneurs, face today is raising and accessing capital. And Momentum, thanks to support of our amazing advisory board, really helps bridge that gap, giving the entrepreneurs an opportunity to pitch to a room full of deep-pocketed investors during our Momentum Pitch Day. Many of the companies that were part of the Momentum class actually raised capital, and we're already working to onboard several of our partners directly onto Bean's menu today. Pitch Day actually occurred a week before the Black Lives Matter movement and protest nationally. So we all were very aware that while Momentum was just one program, it was part of a national historic movement and conversation around racial equality. The history of cannabis used as a weapon for incarcerating Black and brown communities is well known. And if this emerging industry of cannabis is ever to be legitimate, equity has to be forefront and center.
Programs like Momentum are things that other companies can do, right? We don't have to wait on the government to tell us. We can use what we have and help underserved communities.
If we don't start this from the beginning and we don't start this right now, how are we going to overcome all of these hurdles? So we've collectively made sure that we're being inclusive of all these businesses to make sure that we're all supporting each other as one.
Today's cannabis industry is wholly indebted to decades of work and activism by Black and brown communities. And Ease understands that we wouldn't even exist without that sacrifice. It's a modest first step, but we're excited because we think it's the very beginning of hopefully our program, but also many programs just like it.